fantastic. This is GT racing right now.
He's got traction, he's got everything outside of both of them! Maloney!
Oh, he's taken Anderson! Anderson's up to
Oh my god! Big crash! Oh my goodness, half the field's gonna get rolled!
Second very close. These guys are want to make their way through the field very quickly.
This is it! This is over! I can't believe this! Oh my god!
God, what?
Speedcafe.com, your #1 source for all the latest motorsport news and features. Breaking news, live event updates, unprecedented global motorsport coverage, performance motoring news and reviews, all in the palm of your hand, anywhere, anytime. Speedcafe.com, first, fast and free.
And hello and welcome to the US of A, to the Daytona road course for round number 5, the penultimate round of the Speedcafe.com GT3 Eseries presented by Kincrome Tools. I'm Lachlan Mansell. Joining me in the commentary box for tonight's 90-minute race is Ryan Jones. And Ryan, we're getting to the business end of the season, 4 rounds down, 2 rounds to go. And the question, can anybody beat Job Stewart in the pursuit, pun unintended, for the Speed Cafe GT3 E-Series?
Yeah, g'day Lockie. Hello everyone at home. It's going to be tough. Stewart has looked in very good form. We know he's a very good driver, and he really suits these GT3 cars. And heading into this round, as long as he keeps it clean, there's 150 points on offer. He's already got a 98-point buffer. So, I mean, coming out of here, if it's a clean race for him, I think that's one hand on the trophy.
So the scorecards so far for this season, out of the 4 races that we've had, 2 race victories have gone the way of Job Stewart in the opening 2 rounds at Indianapolis and at Spa. Round number 3 at the Nürburgring went the way of Jeremy Clark in his Ferrari, and the most recent round number 4 last week, which was held at the Le Mans circuit des Lausanne in France, went to Shane van Gisbergen in the McLaren. Tonight we are at the Daytona road course, and then in 2 weeks' time, or just over a fortnight's time, we finish up with another 2-hour race at Mount Panorama Bathurst to conclude the series. As always, we've got some great prizes up for grabs thanks to our series sponsor Kincrome Tools. Tonight, the highest placed amateur driver is going to walk away with the 400cc multifunction jump starter and also a 2-drawer workshop creeper seat, and they will come thanks to our series sponsor Kincrome Tools. And of course, the overall highest placed AB driver in the series will win the tool drawer or the tool chest as well, which is worth about $2,500. Now, here's one of the drivers on screen who might be one of the main challengers for Job Stewart. Jackson Suzlin-Harlow, the Altus Esports Audi R race, finished in second place last week at Le Mans, and he has moved up into the top 3 in the championship standings as well. JSH, and we know that he is one of the very talented up-and-coming young sim racers in Australia. There is Andre Heimgartner in the Mercedes AMG GT3, one of the pro drivers in the field tonight. And that's one of the things that we do love about the Speed Cafe GT3 Eseries. It pits some of the best drivers in Australia in terms of real-life racing experience on the blacktop up against some of the best drivers on the sim track.
So qualifying here, very important to put yourself in a good position. And that good position isn't completely clean traffic like you would normally expect. So much of this track is taken at 100% full throttle, mainly, the entire speedway section of the circuit, that the slipstream is massive and can gain you upwards of half a second and often decides the end of the race. But in qualifying, it's going to be crucial to putting down a really fast lap time. So expect to see drivers and teams working together to try and giving each other a good slipstream and a bit of a slingshot towards a good lap time. Harlow, though, not going to get one in, but is to see Steve Miller here a little bit far back and not going to get a good toe, and his first lap is at 1:48.1.
Let's have a look at this circuit. Right on board with Steve Nellery down through turn number 1. Really tricky corner because you are both braking and turning at the same time. You head through turn number 2, which is up over the curbs, hard on the brakes for turn number 3, which is a very, very tight right-hand hairpin. Actually, one of the main overtaking opportunities around this circuit. Back on the accelerator out of the corner, and then up towards the left-hand kink at turn number 4, which is actually quite a fast-flowing corner. And then another very, very tight hairpin, which will be another one of the overtaking opportunities down into turn 5. And then we'll stay with this onboard shot from Steve Nellery. Turn number 6 is critical because it's the left-hander that takes you back onto the speedway section. Really important to get a good exit from this particular corner. And as Stephen shows us there, it's a double apex that you take that leads you back onto the speedway section. And then, as you alluded to, Ryan, from this point all the way around the high-speed bank's left-hander, you are at 100% throttle. And the next time you come off the throttle and get on the brakes is for the bus stop chicane, which is actually officially it's 4 corners. It's turns 8, 9, 10 and 11, and we see Stephen negotiating his way through there now. Again, very important to keep the momentum and the corner speed up through there. Back onto the speedway section, back to 100% throttle, and hoping that you can get a tow from the car in front, not like Steve Nellery is getting at the moment, take it back around to the start-finish line.
It's a big track, but the banked sections make it go by very quickly, and it also keeps the field very tightly compact, especially up at the top in the racing. Many times when we see GT cars come here in iRacing, so looking forward to the race to see how it plays out. He talks about Harlow being potentially one of the challenges for Stewart. In terms of outright pace, he's definitely there, but he's almost out of championship range if he drops a few points today, so he really needs a strong result. So look for him to be really fighting to get a win today and nothing else. But Job Stewart, he's starting strong. He's quickest at the moment by half a tenth back to Andre Heimgartner.
So basically, the equation tonight is that this round is worth 150 points. Jackson Suzlin-Harlow is 149.5 points off the lead, so almost an entire race's worth of points. However, the final round at Bathurst will be worth slightly more points because it is a 2-hour race, so it will be worth 225. So what JSH has to try and do tonight is reduce the margin, maybe hope that Job Stewart has a bad round so that he can head to the final at Bathurst well in championship contention, which Job Stewart, I mean, he's finished 3 out of the 4 races on the podium and he's had 2 race wins, but he had a shocker at the Nürburgring, so it's not out of the question for Job Stewart to have another bad round at some point. It's about being in the position to capitalise when that happens.
And
Here
at
we
that
are.
first, who knows what could happen.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
This is a good toe that Harlow's getting here. A double toe, in fact, off Richard Skender and Stephen Ellery in front. Wow. Check out that lap time. 1:43.831. He goes 7/10 of a second quicker than the rest of the field.
So Job Stewart, our championship leader, gets relegated back to second position. Andre Heimgartner next in position 3. And then it's back to Emerson Harvey, Richard Skender, Ian McMahon, who was one of the front runners last week at Le Mans. Strategy didn't quite work out for him. Paul Auditore, Ben Dahlia and Jack Boyd currently rounding out the top 10 as we see a couple of other drivers improving. Andre Heimgartner has improved his lap time and moved up to second in the standings, relegating Job Stewart back to third. Paul Auditore now up into fourth position. John Martin moving up inside the top 5.
Auditore is, of course, second in the standings too. He's been very, very consistent over the 4 rounds so far.
He has top 10 finishes in all 4 rounds, the only driver in the championship, in fact, to finish in the top 10 in every race, but yet to actually get a podium finish, Paul Auditore. So he's been consistent, but he hasn't quite had the pace to challenge at the very pointy end of the field.
Watching Stewart now as he makes his way to the start-finish line. He's all by himself, though, so don't expect this one to be a massive improvement. In fact, it's not a validated lap time, so he's either picks up an off-track or come out of pit lane on that lap. He winds himself up to begin another attempt.
And of course, this is a circuit that holds endurance races in the real world as well. And we say the Daytona 24-hour each year, which has different classes for prototype and GT cars.
Does one of the most famous races in the world, the Daytona 24-hour, that kicks off the motorsport season pretty much each and every year.
And it looks like a bit of a spin there for Andre Heimgartner. So he had contact with another car. No, there was a BMW just getting out of his way. And we're hearing it wasn't actually Andre Heimgartner, it was Jack Cafode in the sister car that was having the incident down there at turn 1.
There is Heimgartner at the head of a train of cars. Look at that, no one in front. If you look behind him, there's about 3 or 4 guys way off in the back of the shot there, lined up, ready to try and get an advantage. That's John Martin, Brad Clank and Bradley Carr. Jackson Harlow back there too, actually.
John Martin, of course, an accomplished endurance racer, and he's been one of the surprise packets of this GT3 Eseries. Hasn't had a lot of sim racing experience prior to competing in this series, but he's adapted really, really well, and he's had some great results. Most notably at Spa, where we saw that he was able to finish up on the podium. No, sorry, not Spa, Nürburgring.
Nürburgring was a wild race, wasn't it? And he was definitely one of the drivers to capitalise from that.
Spa was a wild race as well, but for completely different reasons. That being that we had a lot of cars running out of fuel in the very dying stages. So Job Stewart in the Erebus Academy pursued sim racing BMW Z4 GT3, starting a flying lap, currently scored in position 3 on the timesheets. Needs to find almost 7/10 of a second if he wants to relieve Jackson Suzlin Harlow of pole position.
The bad news for Stewart is, again, no help from a draft in front. If he was 2 seconds up the road, he'd be in the perfect position to benefit like Carlo did with that double toe at the very end of his lap. And, there's a spinner just off in front of him there, who gets out of the way.
Good third sector time for Job Stewart. It's the personal best that he's done so far, and his first and second sector times were not too bad either. So this is a pretty decent lap for Job Stewart. Will it be enough though, considering that he needs to find almost 7/10 to displace Jackson Suzel and Harlow? Not sure that he's going to find that much, but he might just find enough to sneak onto the front row ahead of Andre Heimgarten. Once again, time through sector number 4, not too bad. We do have the racetrack divided into a total of 5 different sectors, so that's where we can get our comparative lap times from. Here comes Job Stewart up to the line, using a bit of the apron. Is it enough to bolt him onto the front row? Yes, it is. So goes within 0.34 of a second of Suzel and Harlow.
We're pretty happy with that. I wager 3/10 can be found very easily in the draft. So those two look pretty even in terms of pace. Another driver who's making his way down to the bus stop on the back straight. This is Jack Boyd, who finds himself sitting in 7th place at the moment. Best lap of 1:44.681. Jeff Connell just popped up into 2nd ahead of Job. Good lap from him, the number 26. Boyd going to make his way through NASCAR 3 and 4 and run to the start-finish line. If he can find an improvement of 1/10 of a second, he'll jump up 4 spots. Let's see if he can get it. Across the line, it's not an improvement. He's 2/10 off, unfortunately, so he'll stay in 8th after Connell popped up ahead of them all.
Jack Boyd, another driver who's in the top 5 in the championship standings, had a bit of a tougher run last week at Le Mans. Cost him some points. And here's Reece Cohen, another driver who was actually 3rd in the championship before last week, but really had a rough time of it at Le Mans. His qualifying session, his pace has not been all that crash hot either. Currently in 17th position. And we're getting into the dying stages of the session as Jeff Connell moves on to the front row. So good time for Jeff Connell, one of our other Mercedes drivers, to move up into position 2.
I think I mentioned that about a minute ago, Lockie. Welcome.
Sorry.
Welcome to 6:49 PM of the broadcast.
So at the moment we've got Audi first, Mercedes second, BMW third, Mercedes fourth, Jordan Prudent moving up to position 5. John Martin, Kobe Williams, who had a good run last week at Le Mans. Paul Auditore slotting back to 8th position. Jack Boyd, who we were looking at just before. And then Emerson Harvey rounding out the top 10.
Overall spread through the field, it's actually really good. The majority of the drivers are covered by only about 2 seconds. And that goes all the way back to Bradley Carr, I'm looking at in 27th place. As Andre Heimgartner, P3 still, but only just over Job Stewart. It's 300s between them. Heimgartner's gonna lap. He's right behind John Martin.
And he's just moved up ahead of Job Stewart as well. So we've now only got 0.34 of a second separating the top 4 cars. So it's all compressing up at the top of the timesheets now that we're into the dying stages of this session.
You know, I've got to say, I still think that golden draft that he got might be the difference here, Lockie, because it's not often you get yourself in the optimal range. It's not a case of being just behind someone. You've got to be in exactly the right spot behind them to get the maximum amount of the draft, and he got that off 2 cars, which is almost impossible to plan, and I don't know if anyone's going to be able to overcome that, no matter how good the rest of your lap is.
Here's Job Stewart, who's got clear track, but maybe a bit too much clear track because he's not going to be able to take any sort of advantage from slipstreaming from any other car in the field at the moment. I think he's setting himself up for what will be the last lap of the session here. Job Stewart, he needs to find a bit of extra time to work his way back onto the front row. Looking at Kane Thornhill in the Ferrari, currently down in a 12th position. Currently 4th in the championship, Kane Thornhill, so another one of our series front runners. And off track for Kane Thornhill, so the lap invalidated, and that is his session done. And checkered flag is out, so session is coming to a close. Watching Jack Boyd in 9th position at the moment, but he has aborted that lap. Here comes Jackson Suzel and Harlow up to the line. We saw that John Martin was pushing on pretty hard as well. Negotiates his way through the bus stop chicane. Does Jackson Suzel and Harlow.
Harlow might go quicker here to solidify his place at the front. Let's see how this stacks up for him. His best so far is a 143.831, and his final attempt at the session is unfortunately not going to count, so he will remain 2/10 clear. John Martin here. Unfortunately, he's the one giving the tow. That's Ryan Healy tucked in behind him. Martin's going to bring it to pit road. Healy using as much of that draft as he could find. Steve is worth it in the end. As he crosses the line, his lap doesn't count either.
Ryan Campbell, a bit further back in 31st position, will be one of the final drivers to complete a lap in this qualifying session. And tonight it's Jet Johnson who is driving the Mercedes that his dad Stephen Johnson has been driving in the opening rounds of this series, the number 17 car. Famous Johnson at number 17. Checkered flag is out though to complete the session, and congratulations to Jackson Suzel and Harlow. He takes pole position for round number 5 of the speedcafe.com GT3 Eseries presented by Kincrome Tools here at Daytona International Speedway. Jeff Connell second ahead of Andre Heimgartner, and then it's Job Stewart back to James Foster, Jordan Pruden, John Martin, Kobe Williams, Paul Auditore, and Jack Boyd completing the top 10.
Yeah, just 0.8 of a second covering that top 10 in the end. Everson Harvey, Kane Thornhill just back there too. Reese Cohen, Richard Skender, Ian McMahon, Benjamin Dahlia, David Hueso, Ben Holiday, Pete Dunham, and Ryan Healy.
Back then to Jack Cafoe, Daniel Yeaman, Brady Carr in 23rd position, and Dalton Ellery, the series organiser, 24th, ahead of Cam McDougall, Brad Clenk, Matt Dunphy, Bradley Carr, Ray Oliver, and then the production car racer, the reigning Bathurst 6-hour winner, Berry Clinton, in 30th position.
Rain Campbell, Jake Bonham, Stephen Ellery, 31st through 33rd, Tyler Collins and Tyson McAvoy, Robert Crisdale, Jet Johnson, as you mentioned, and Sam Batty, Jason Markowski, Zach Nickel, running out the top 40 drivers from Daytona. And Eddie Beswick rounding out the field.
Yep, ahead of course, Sam Blacklock, our race director for the Speed Cafe GT3 Eseries. That completes qualifying. We'll grab a break here on speedcafe.com. When we come back, we will gear up for the 90-minute race at the Daytona Road Course.
speedcafe.com, your number one source for all the latest motorsport news and features. Breaking news, live event updates, unprecedented global motorsport coverage, performance motoring news and reviews, all in the palm of your hand, anywhere, anytime. Speedcafe.com, first, fast and free.
Speedcafe.com GT3 series presented by Kincrome will provide an enormous opportunity for amateur racers, young and old, to take on some of the real stars of our sport, the Andrew Heimgartners, the Will Browns, the Thomas Randalls, who've done terrific things in V8 supercars. They'll all have to go head to head with some of these kids that are 13, 14 years old, all wanting to make a name for themselves in the sport. At the moment, there's no opportunity for them to do that because of the COVID-19 pandemic, but the online series that we're presenting gives them a real chance in a fun atmosphere, serious atmosphere, but a fun atmosphere to go out and show their stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's awesome. It's something that obviously we've seen with the Supercar E-Series, and for us to be able to get in and keep sharp, and obviously with the help of Kincrome and Speed Cafe, and we've been dabbling in a little bit of e-racing for the last sort of 4 weeks now, and to now have proper, I guess, backed series is something that's going to be great, not only for myself, but for a lot of the older blokes, Steve Ellery, a lot of the young blokes that are in, that we've been racing the last sort of 3 or 4 weeks, which is something that I think that is going to be ongoing once we get racing again.
The great things about the series will be some of the older stalwarts of our sport, the Steve Johnsons, the Steve Ellerys of the sport, who've done some terrific things at some memorable places like Bathurst, to be racing against some of these kids and racing against their own sons in a controlled atmosphere, online, and having a lot of fun.
Yeah, our father-son combination has been really cool to be able to, for myself, be involved with Jet in the last few weeks, but obviously you've got Steve Ellery, Dalton Ellery. Dalton's put a lot of effort behind this series and have really started the ball rolling 3 or 4 weeks ago. But for Jet and I to be able to get in and share, and probably look at, out of the 6 rounds, doing 3 each, and see if we can combine our I guess total and our championship standings together to be able to hopefully finish up towards the pointy end prize, and the I guess the product that's coming on board with Kincrome attached is fantastic. I think that there are pro gamers that I guess race for money and race for prizes, but for this and for amateur guys to be able to come in and win these sort of products and have this much up for grabs is, I think, unheard of in Australia. So I think it's for us and for the series, it's a massive boost. We're going to have full grids no matter what, and I think they're going to be quality grids. There's going to be a lot of fast guys in there, older guys, younger guys, and it's going to be pretty tough 6 weeks to be up the front. So everyone's going to have to work pretty hard at getting the prize at the end.
This is fantastic. This is GT racing right now.
He's got traction, he's got rid of the outside of both of them! Maloney!
Oh, he's taken Anderson. Anderson's up top.
Oh my god! Oh! Big crash! Oh my goodness, half the field's gonna get rolled!
It's very close. These guys are want to make their way through the field very quickly.
Oh, here we go.
Oh no! That's massive!
This is it. This is over. I can't believe this. Oh my God.
God, what?
Great to have your company here on speedcafe.com from the Daytona Road Course, where we are set for a 90-minute night race. It's Ryan Jones and Lockie Mansell talking you through all of the action this evening. Qualifying has been run and won, so not too far away from a race start for what will be the penultimate round of the Speed Cafe GT3 Eseries. Let's remind you of our championship standings coming into this round of the series. And on top of the ladder, it is Job Stewart. He extended his advantage to 98 points over Paul Auditore after chalking up his third podium finish of the season at Le Mans last week. Jackson Suzlin-Harlow third in the standings, even despite the fact that he's missed a round. And then it's Kane Thornhill and Jack Boyd rounding out the top five. Reece Cohen slips back to 6th position last week. Kobe Williams moved up to 7th position after a pretty impressive performance at Le Mans. And then it's Jeff Connell, Shane Van Gisbergen, who was our round winner last week but not competing tonight, and Blake Purdy completing at your top 10 in the series standings.
Definitely a lot of drivers still in it, notably those top 3 guys. Going to be keeping a very close eye on them over tonight's proceedings and seeing who's going to put themselves in the best spot before the race to finish it all off at Mount Panorama in a couple weeks' time. We're here at the World Centre of Racing. We've got 90 minutes of action ahead of us, and going to be very tough for anyone to break away with the power of the draft.
Yeah, looking forward to this race, and we saw a similar thing at Le Mans, didn't we? The power of the slipstream down the long Mulsanne straight. We saw lots of slipstreaming and packs of 5 or 6 cars that were all racing against one another and jockeying for position due to the slipstream and the power of the slipstream keeping all of the cars close together. And I think that we might see something similar tonight as well.
It won't be surprising, and should put on a pretty good race as a result. Gonna race into the darkness here. We're starting at 6:45 in sim time, so the sun will set by the time we finish this race. Starting off already with a cold track though, just 21 degrees. That's going to offer up a lot of grip to these drivers to play with, so we might see less mistakes than we have in previous weeks, just based off that track temp. But also, it means drivers going to be pushing very hard.
I think the other thing that you might see too, Ryan, is people trying to get through the race on just the single set of tyres, which we have seen that it is quite possible to do in the 90-minute races. In terms of pit strategy, the other 90-minute races that we've had so far, generally one pit stop has been the order of the day, although, as we saw at the Spa round, there were a lot of cars that were very marginal on fuel towards the end of that race. So I'll be interested to see how everybody plays it in terms of pit strategy, but I would expect that it might just be the single pit stop tonight. We'll update you on that as the race progresses, because there's a couple of different factors at play here. Number one, there's a maximum amount of fuel that each car starts the race with. And secondly, there's also a maximum amount of fuel that drivers are permitted to add during the pit stop as well. And it's both of those factors that will determine how many pit stops we need to get through the race. One of the things that we have seen, Ryan, is that we know that there's always at least one competition caution that comes out in each round of the Speed Cafe GT3 Eseries. The organisers like to bring that competition caution out at a time that is very inconvenient for everybody's fuel strategy.
Yes, certainly. So we'll see when it comes out. I'm not sure where the window is for this race today. I haven't seen the announcement like previous weeks, so we'll stay tuned for that. But I would assume, somewhere between the start and the end of this race, we'll see a competition caution at some point. So for the drivers, I guess they've got no window to go off as to where it might be, which should be interesting.
We'll see how it all plays out. What we certainly saw at Le Mans was that most of the field pitted for their first pit stop on the same lap, but then we saw a bit of a diversity in strategies thereafter. A reminder of the grid positions for those of you who've just joined us. It was Jackson Suzlin-Harlow in the Altus Esports Audi R race, who qualified fastest. He'll start on pole position. Job Stewart, our championship leader, lines up out of grid position number 4. Saw a couple of drivers moving up quite late in the session, including James Foster and Jordan Pruden. In terms of the pro drivers, Job Stewart, Andre Heimgartner and John Martin are your pro drivers inside the top 10 on the grid. Paul Auditore, currently the closest challenger to Job Stewart in the championship, will start this race out of grid position 9.
Yeah, Jack Boyd there too. And then some fast drivers in this next group. You've got Emerson Harvey, Kane Thornhill, Reese Cohen's pretty fast as well, Benjamin Dahlia, Ian McMahon. We've seen a lot of these guys run towards the front of the field over previous rounds.
And Ben Holiday, the youngest driver in the field, who's only 12 years old as well, starting out of grid position 18. He's had some fairly impressive performances throughout this series as well. A bit further back, some other names to watch out for. Brady Carr, who's behind the wheel of the Bostik Alternative Freight Services Audi R8. He'll be pretty quick. And then starting a bit further back, some of our other pro drivers, Stephen Ellery, Jet Johnson. I noticed as well Tyson McAvoy and Tyler Collins starting a bit further back than we would perhaps expect. So some quite fast cars starting from a little bit further back in the pack. But getting the fields formed up in side-by-side formation, ready for the double final rolling start here at the Daytona International Speedway. Very much looking forward to this race. The Speed Cafe GT3 E-Series races have had different twists and turns and different storylines in the weeks that we've been running these events so far, and I'm sure that at this high-speed Banks Daytona road course, it's not going to be any different. The safety car is in pit lane, and we are underway for round number 5 of the Speed Cafe GT3 E-Series. Jackson Suzel and Harlow, the Altus Esports Audi R8, gets the jump. Good start too from Andre Heimgartner, as he looks to try and squeeze down on the inside of Jeff Connell, but in fact Heimgartner might be a bit vulnerable to Job Stewart, who was trying to hang tough there around the outside. In the end, Stewart decides to tuck back in behind Heimgartner. Oh, got John Martin off the road and in the fence in the background. Wondering there if he got a touch from behind, and we've got a couple of other cars following him into the Armco. That's a total of 4 cars that have lost it on the exit of turn number 1 and fired left into the Armco. Damage to those cars, including Dalton Ellery. Goodness me, there must have been some other cars that have had problems at turn 1 as well, because there's still some cars that are coming through that corner who are quite a fair way back from everybody else.
Yeah, 2 cars around in the very back of the shot when we saw that first car in the Armco down at turn number 1. So, as we head back onto the NASCAR Oval for the first time, Harlow's got a few car lengths advantage over Jeff Connell, who's got Andre Heimgartner right up behind him, and right alongside him to the inside he dives. Will they run towards the wheel through the bus stop, or will someone lift off? Connell lifts off. Heimgartner goes in very deep, maybe a fraction too deep, and that's going to compromise him now. All the way back out onto NASCAR 3 and 4. Connell closes up again, and Job Stewart was almost pushing Jeff through the corner.
And this has all worked to the advantage of our race leader, Jackson Suzel and Harlow, who's already been able to skip out to a nice margin while these cars behind were battling. Know that Jackson Suzel and Harlow, the Audi R8 is very good, and it's got clean air, and it's very good as the track conditions cool down. So Jackson Suzel and Harlow's Audi will be loving these cooler track conditions. And yes, like you say there, Ryan, Jordan Pruden in the McLaren going for a big move around the outside, if you don't mind, on Job Stewart into turn 1.
He had a lot of momentum, had a triple toe, used it, pulled out and drove around a lot of them. And unfortunately, in extreme outside, not working for him. Down at turn 1, he tucks back in to 5th place. Harlow skips out to a 1.8 second gap now over Heimgartner, Connell, Stewart, and then Pruden. Cody Williams back there in 6th. James Foster on the defence from Jack Boyd. Paul Auditore, Kane Thornhill, Richard Skender, Reese Cohen. A whole host of cars stacked up here. And Cohen, in fact, is on the charge trying to make a move. And he does make the move.
Nice move there through on the Mercedes of Richard Skender. We've had 5 cars coming to the pits at the end of lap 1 for repairs as well. Zach Nickel, John Martin, Cam McDougall, Dalton Ellery and Stephen Ellery all in the pits as Richard Skender fights back on Reese Cohen. got the better exit out of turn 6, was able to use the Toyota slingshot back past ahead of Race Cohen, and he will draw ahead as they head down into the braking zone for the bus stop chicane. So these cars battling just on or just outside the top 10 at the moment, squabbling over positions 11 and 12. They had a very racy start so far from our front-running drivers as we ride on board with Job Stewart, who has a wall of Mercedes-Benzes ahead of him. Jeff Connell and Andre Heimgartner. Connell to the inside as Heimgartner takes the high line for the run down into turn number 1, braking and turning at the same time, using the anti-lock brakes to make sure that you maintain control of the car. Wide goes Andre Heimgartner. He'll drop a pair of positions because Connell and Stewart are both able to file past the Mercedes.
Yeah, he was incredibly close to the right front quarter panel of Connell as he turned in. I think he saw that open up the steering a little bit, and in the end that hurt him as he had a wobble, ran wide, and lost those 2 spots. Ray Oliver has gone all the way out to the grass, found himself a long way off in the infield there, and he drops over a dozen spots as a result, rejoins back in the 30s. I did see Connell or Heimgartner were locking bumpers, trying to draft their way back up, push their way back up towards Harlow, but even when they did that, they didn't gain any time. In the end, Connor went for the overtake, and they're now 2.4 off. Harlow skipping away, doing a fantastic job. He really gave himself a good shot at this when he pulled away from that slipstream on the opening lap.
Like I said, Jackson, Suzel and Harlow, the Audi R8s, we've seen that they perform at their best in clear track and also as the track conditions cool down. So as it gets dark here and the temperature drops, Harlow's car's only going to get stronger. The weakness for the Audi is when it's having to battle against other cars or when it's in traffic. So Jackson, Suzel and Harlow now, he wants to skip away and make sure that he doesn't find himself in a congested situation with other cars. And we have seen in previous rounds of this series that whenever Jackson, Suzel and Harlow ends up on maybe a suboptimal strategy that buries him in the pack, that's where he tends to struggle a bit. So we've been loving the fact that he's got clear track out in front at the moment.
On board with Jeff Connell there. Further back, it was Jack Boyd that put down the fastest lap of the race there on lap number 3, and he's sitting in 8th place at the moment. And Pete Dunham is sitting off the track at turn 1. Going to be careful to rejoin here. Finds a gap and gets back up to racing speed. Modem simulation replay will tell us what happened to him down at the first corner. Was there contact? There was from behind. The BMW sliding in. That was Ben Holiday. Just tagged his rear.
Yep, the distinctive blue and yellow IKEA entry making contact with Ben Dunham there. And like you say, it's a pretty tricky rejoin when you go off the track there at turn number 1 because it's a blind approach. So you need to be very careful turning back into the oncoming traffic. Watching the battle for second position at the moment between Jeff Connell and Job Stewart, who have just managed to extend a bit of breathing space over Andre Heimgartner and Jordan Pruden. Kobe Williams having another good run following on from his impressive performance at Le Mans last week. He's 6th ahead of James Foster, Jack Boyd, Paul Auditore and Kane Thornhill rounding out the top 10 at this stage. Still a long way to go though, and a lot to play out.
Already you can see how minimal the spread is across the top 10 comparative to recent rounds. There's only, 7 seconds covering them. We've seen that be north of 10 seconds out at Le Mans. And the Nordschleifer, Benjamin Dahlia, ran off and was facing the wrong way down at the bus stop chicane. And he, unfortunately, is going to drop a lot of places as a result. And Stewart just put in the fastest lap of the race as he got by Connell down at the first corner too.
Yeah, so Job Stewart was actually a tenth of a second quicker than Jackson, Suzel and Harlow that time around, but lap times among this leading pack were very fast, but in fact it was Paul Auditore who punched out in 1 minute 44.9 down in 9th position to actually be the fastest driver on the racetrack at the moment. And we've got Kane Thornhill in the pits. Now this is interesting because he was inside the top 10 and it's way early to pit at the moment. He's only completed 4 laps, so not sure whether there's been damage unsighted by us in commentary or something else that's triggered that car to come in for an unscheduled pit stop. But yeah, that seems like a very, very early stage of the race to be doing a pit stop, as we see that these cars from second down to about 9th or 10th are all compressing up. It's a big gaggle of cars that are all absolutely nose to tail as they come out of turn number 6 that leads back onto the speedway section. And here's a motive simulation replay which might tell a bit more of the story. We're watching Richard Skender, who was just outside the top 10, not anymore. And was that Kane Thornhill that clipped Richard Skender? No, it was another Ferrari.
No, that was a shot we saw very briefly for a second as you were pondering what happened to Thornhill. And got a quick replay up. That was Quaso that hit him, unfortunately. Now, to conclude the topic about his pit stop, now, I've been fed the information that they've got about 25 minutes worth of fuel in the car when they start this race, and they can add somewhere in the region of 50 minutes worth of fuel when they pit. Now, that opens itself up to a two-stop strategy because you have to be a brave man to try and save about 15 minutes worth of fuel that you'd be short. So, maybe for Thornhill, he's trying to get himself off cycle here and pit early, do a long middle stint.
Yeah, my maths might not be brilliant, but I certainly know enough that 25 plus 50 equals 75, and 75 is 15 less than 90, so you're right, it doesn't quite add up, does it, for a one-stop strategy based on those numbers. Even with the caution, I don't think you spend long enough under the guys of the safety car to save that much fuel. So unfortunately, well, actually, no, I'm going to say fortunately, we're going to get a two-stop here because a two-stopper opens itself up to a lot more variants in the strategy, doesn't it? Yeah, I do agree with you on that. So there we go. So we're probably going to be seeing two-stop strategies. But what that means as well is that for the second pit stop, it means that the window is quite wide as well, because it means that you can pit pretty much any time from 50 minutes remaining in the race for your second and final stop to have enough fuel on board to get home. And that's when other things like tyre strategies will come into play as well. So lots of different variables to play out, that's for sure, as we look at a couple of battling Mercedes drivers, Jeff Connell and Andre Heimgartner. Job Stewart's just been able to skip away by about half a second, with the two Mercedes keeping him honest. And interesting that Jackson Suslin-Harlow, he opened up that big gap in the initial stages of the race, but he hasn't really been able to open it up any more since then. And if anything, he's just sort of managing the gap back to the cars behind. Could be that JSH has got a bit of performance in reserve and he's not overdriving at the moment when he doesn't need to, but he's not disappearing down the road like he was in the opening 5 minutes or so.
Wow, they were almost 3 wide there. Emerson Harvey in the middle of this mess of cars in the Audi. Now ends up dropping. So he's the BMW, isn't he, of course? He goes to the head of the train.
Just moves up ahead of... moving up ahead of Daniel Yeaman there in the Audi R8.
For 6th place as well is a good battle. Kobe Williams, James Foster, and in fact they've touched, as I've called attention to them. A huge dive from Foster to get it up the inside of Williams. He wasn't happy about that. Jack Boyd capitalises as well, almost gets into the back of Foster too. Very tight here.
James Foster's had some really good results in the TCR cars on the iRacing platform, as has Jack Boyd for that matter. And Kobe Williams, who was carrying one of our webcams last week at Le Mans, had a really good result, one of his best results of the series. So good to see him running up inside the top 10. And Paul Auditore, who is in championship contention, let's not forget, sitting in 9th position at the moment, make that 10th in fact with those couple of moves that have happened. Not really where he needs to be if he wants to be up challenging Job Stewart for the championship. He really needs to be finishing ahead of Job Stewart tonight to close down that points margin and give himself a chance of victory. Heading to Bathurst as he draws alongside, pulls down into the apron, walking down on the inside of Kobe Williams, not able to make the move through there, has to breathe out of the throttle, which will cost him a bit of momentum as they run it down into turn 1.
Yeah, Williams edged the car over when he saw Auditore start to look down low, and I think that was enough to persuade the 89s to just lift off and tuck back in line. Further down the order, this is the 22nd place car, the number 52. Ooh, Someone's spun the inside. This is Rain Campbell, and he's making his way by a couple stricken cars who've probably come into contact down at the first corner.
It's been the danger zone, hasn't it, in this race? We saw 4 or 5 cars going off on the first lap. We've seen a couple of other incidents there over the race as well. Again, it is Daniel Yeaman. Again, because it's a corner, Ryan, where you are turning and braking at the same time, it can be very easy to misjudge either the braking marker or the steering angle. And you know what? Brad Klenk was already having a moment there, so I'm not going to blame Daniel Yeaman for that incident, because I think that Brad Klenk was already well on his way to losing control of that car before Daniel Yeaman actually came in there and made contact.
I've just noticed something. So the last 2 laps, Job Stewart has caught Harlow. It was 0.2 of a second and then 0.4 of a second, respectively, that gap shut down. So Stewart is starting to come, and he's dragging Andre Heimgartner and Jeff Connor with him. On this lap, he does a 45.8 and Harlow a 45.9, so another 10th quicker.
Yeah, so there's the visual gaps between the cars at the moment. So you're right, Jackson, Suzel and Harlow gradually being caught. Jordan Pruden's got the road pretty much all to his own at the moment, as we've got Ray Oliver off again. A couple of incidents for him so far in this race.
That rear wing looks like it needs to be hammered back into the right shape. Look at this. Big Dunham. Someone getting a bit of the grass there as Dunham trying to fend off in the battle for 17th place. At Brady Carr at the head, Dunham in 18th, and Crisdale behind him trying to get by him. Campbell at the back of this group as well. And oh, look at that dive up the inside. Pete Dunham. No hesitation to pull the trigger there on Brady Carr. And Robert Crisdale is given an opportunity to pull alongside now as well, but he's on the wrong side of the circuit for the next corner.
Doesn't matter though, look at the amount of exit speed that he's been able to carry Robert Crisdale. Rain Campbell, the other driver involved in that battle. Robert Crisdale's another driver who qualified probably a bit further back than we would have expected given his results in some of the previous rounds, and he's lining up for a move on Brady Carr, but Rain Campbell has judged that to perfection, and Rain Campbell's in a very good spot here to quite possibly grab 2 spots as they head into the bus stop. Not quite, but he will pick up the spot on Robert Crisdale there and move on up into 19th position.
Brad Klenk might make this lap even worse for Robert Crisdale now, because he's pulled up to the back of his rear bumper in that Audi, and let's see if he can pull a move down at the first corner. Now, first corner is interesting because you naturally want to pull yourself out wide for the move, but if you do that, you offer up the inside, so a lot of drivers opt to just drive down the left-hand side of the track and really try to straight brake early and then get it turned in. Definitely a few lines you can take through the braking zone for that corner.
But the really wide line that Brad Klenk took there is probably not one of them. You could see just how quickly he ran out of grip out there, because obviously that's where the marbles are going to build up, and there will be a lot less grip out there than what there is on the racing line. Down the inside, Rain Campbell goes for a move through on... Is that Robert Crisdale again? Yes, it is. So they've swapped positions a couple of times in the last lap or so.
Update on the gap at the top, 1.4 seconds now, so it's still coming in. Not quite as quickly as it was. Harlow's responded to the encroaching gap. In fact, last lap he turned it around and opened it up by a 10th, but I think on this one, Stewart's actually responded again and improved his own lap time, and he does. He goes half a second quicker.
Yeah, again, there's some other cars that are just a bit further back that are recording some quite fast lap times as well, including James Foster in position 6.
Yeah.
He's also lapping in the 45, so it's only 5.5 seconds separating the top 6 cars in the race, and James Foster is making up some time on Jordan Pruden, who is in the McLaren, so it's shaping up to be a pretty good contest.
He's been as fast, probably faster than Stewart and Harlow the last 3 laps, Lachlan.
Something's happened to Jack Boyd as well. I've just noticed as well that Jack Boyd, who was in the top 10, has gone disappearing down the timing order. Oh, wow, he was seriously lucky not to get T-boned by both Paul Auditore and Kobe Williams there, but another driver coming to grief at turn 1.
You can see the hesitation. He doesn't know when to gas it up and get it back going. He went around, so fortunate there, but you can see there's not much notice that he gets given of a car as it comes into his view.
That's where it would be very handy to have some flag marshals there, wouldn't it? Telling him when it's safe to go, or even the spotter on the radio telling him when there's a gap in the traffic. But look at the amount of time that he's lost while he's had to be parked there on the side of the racetrack. It's dropped him all the way down to 15th position. He was in 7th spot before that incident happened.
One little mistake can cost you massively. And Boyd, unfortunately, being the poster boy of that statement today. Again, 4/10 quicker for Stewart. So a little lull for a lap, but now he's really starting to reel him in. And now at a second back, he's going to start to get a distant effect of the toe in the slipstream. So it's going to become easier and easier for the gap to shut down. Once he gets to about 3/4, half a second back, he'll close in with no more effort required as soon as they get back to the straight.
Interesting to see how James Stewart's car seems to be getting a bit stronger relative to Jackson Suzel and Harlow as the stint goes on. And yet again, it was James Foster down in 5th position who was the fastest driver on the racetrack at 1 minute 45.4, which was 7/10 of a second quicker than the race leader. So what this is showing is that the different car and driver combinations do have different strengths and weaknesses depending on their fuel loads and how they're looking after their tyres. And there'll be the human element too, and we know that James Foster is well accustomed to doing endurance races. We've seen how well he's been going in the Panorama Drivers Club series where he races in the TCR class, and those races are always 2 hours and 20 minutes, so big concentration factor, being able to punch out fast and consistent lap times, mistake-free for that length of time, and it's something that James Foster is well accustomed to doing.
First drive-through penalty of the race has been handed out, as far as I've seen. Car 129, so that is unfortunately Ben Holiday. That's for contact on lap 4. So he's going to have to take a tour through the lane in that bright blue and yellow machine.
That's fair enough. We saw that incident, and the footage that we saw was fairly damning, so I don't disagree with the decision that's been handed down by our race director Sam Blacklock with that one.
Sam's done a fine job this season of casting a judicial eye over the proceedings.
Kobe Williams in the pits now as well. He might be one of the first drivers taking a scheduled pit stop. We are rapidly approaching that 25-minute mark. Ben Holiday now in to serve his drive-through penalty as well. Thinking that Kobe Williams might have been in maybe a little bit earlier than he would have liked. We were expecting the cars to get to about 25 minutes. We've only completed 22 minutes so far. Brad Klink coming in as well.
With a grain of salt as well. It was given to me by Jay, who's our director behind the scenes, and he's infamous for not always being right, so...
Throw him under the bus, why don't you, Ryan? Poor Jay.
Let's see, if they all dive in before 25 minutes, we know he's correct. But if they go longer, then you know who to blame.
Oh, dear.
I got to clear myself of any blame, don't I?
Well, I'll tell you what. James Stewart has caught Jackson Suzel and Harlow again. He was another 4/10 of a second quicker on the previous lap, and we've now only got 0.33 of a second separating first and second place. So all of a sudden, Jackson Suzel and Harlow with the battle on his hands, and he's going to get out of it into the pits. In fact, all of our leaders coming in this time around after 23 minutes. So we didn't quite get to the 25-minute mark, although Jeff Connell is going to go round for another lap. So getting good fuel range out of the Mercedes AMG GT3. James Foster and Jordan Pruden staying on the racetrack as well.
Well, about 25 minutes is extremely tight between doing the lap that Connell's doing now and having to pit on this lap, because they're just shy of 2-minute lap times. So Connell pushing the limits there, able to get good range from his car. And we'll see whether there's any change on pit road between these guys. Harlow was caught at really the perfect time for him. He didn't have to defend. He was able to come straight down to pit road. But if this is a poor stop for him, he's going to lose out.
We've seen that Jackson Suzlin Harlow in previous rounds has been more likely to take tyres than is our championship leader, Job Stewart, who wins the race off pit road and leapfrogs ahead of the Altus Esports Audi during the pit stop cycle. So Job Stewart moves up to what will be the effective lead of the motor race, ahead of Jackson Suzlin Harlow.
Jack Caffode actually spun it trying to come off pit road just behind those guys. Pit exit here is actually really difficult. Normally you see the mistake of understeering into the fence on the outside. What he did was he actually grabbed the grass on the left and spun it. Heimgartner took tyres, so keep an eye on him as the run continues here with the fresh rubber.
It's an interesting call, given how early we are in the race. 25 minutes, the tyre delta, or the difference between fresh and worn tyres at this stage, is not going to be huge. So Andre Heimgartner has dropped a lot of time and a lot of track precision with that decision to take fresh tyres, as we see the other cars in the field coming in a lap later. Jeff Connell, James Foster, Jordan Pruden, Ian McMahon and Co, the drivers who did not pit on the previous lap, all coming in at this time around. So, Job Stewart, who's been the chaser for the opening stint of the race, now becomes the chasee. And he's being hotly pursued by Jackson Suzlin Harlow. So this is probably not the situation that Harlow would have wanted. Remember how I said that the Audi always seems to go better when it's got clear track? Well, now Jackson Suzlin Harlow has found himself in traffic, but neither one of these drivers have elected to fit fresh tyres to their vehicles. In fact, having a look at the pit stop times, Andre Heimgartner and Paul Auditore, among the leading contenders, pretty much the only two who went for tyres. Everybody else has just gone for fuel. Interesting.
Jeff Connell, does it feel like he's been stationary for a very long time and he's dropped a lot of places? He's taken 4 tyres, but wow, how much time has that cost him in terms of track position? So Harlow and Stewart are heading through the back of the midfield sector now. They're about to enter NASCAR 1 and 2. Connell's just coming out of pit road.
So that was a 69-second pit stop. So that was 9 seconds slower than Andre Heimgartner. So he has dumped an enormous amount of time. And that has dropped him from being right in the lead pack all the way back to 17th position. So we do have a corrected race order here. And there have been some net winners and losers out of this pit stop cycle. So Job Stewart, your race leader, ahead of Jackson Suzlin Harlow. Jordan Pruden now up to 3rd. So he's made a net gain. Kane Thornhill is 4th, but he's out of sequence because he pitted after only 4 laps. So he'll have to come in again fairly soon and he will get out of that 4th position. Kobe Williams up to position number 5. Then it's James Foster 6th. Andre Heimgartner with those fresh tyres sitting in 7th position. And then Reece Cohen, Emerson Harvey and Ian McMahon rounding out the top 10. James Foster's stop was quite long as well, 55.8 seconds for the Ferrari, so I wouldn't be surprised if he changed at least a couple of tyres as well. But check out this battle for the race lead. Job Stewart versus Jackson Suzlin Harlow. We've been saying it all season. These are two of the most talented sim racers in Australia. And they're doing battle on the racetrack for the most coveted piece of real estate in motor racing, the race lead.
Now, Harlow had a run last lap coming out of the final corner. He didn't do anything with it. He lifted off and just sat in the slipstream. So I wonder if that tells us what JSH's strategy is now. Whether it's just to stay in the wake of Stewart here, save a bit of fuel, be easy on his tyres, and keep the nose clean. There's still an hour to go. We know there's a comp caution coming at some stage. There's no reason to fight. They've got a good margin now back to third place in the rest of the field.
The other driver who's been a massive loser out of that first round of pit stops has been Paul Auditore. Before he came into the pit lane, he was sitting in, I think it was 8th or 9th position. He's all the way down in 21st. You know, when you consider that his championship rival, Job Stewart, is first, that's really not where he needs to be.
Definitely right about that. He needs to find some form of big improvement over the next hour of this race. Really impressed with Thornhill, though. Yes, he's off sequence. He pitted very early. But if he's able to stretch this until, well, another 8 minutes, based off the numbers Jake gave us, which now do appear to be correct, he should be able to make it home. So Thornhill, he's not in a bad spot here. He's only 5 seconds off your race lead. He did start 12th, so he's found some big gains.
It's actually a good point. So just because you've got 25 minutes of fuel on board doesn't mean you have to use all of it. So Thornhill might have decided that he was stuck in traffic and he's decided to go for the undercut strategy. So maybe what his plan is to do is try to split the race up a bit more evenly. So what he might be trying to do is get to about the halfway mark of the race, which is about 45 minutes. And then he'll come in for another pit stop, bolt some tyres on, and then in terms of splitting the wear evenly across a couple of different sets of tyres, you'll actually be quite well placed. Just having a look at the lap times at the moment. So Job Stewart, 46.1, 46.2 for Suzlin Harlow. Oh no, Kobe Williams. We need to stop talking drivers up because he had been doing a good job, but he's just spun away a whole lot of positions with yet another mistake at turn 1.
Yeah, but keep on the replay, because down at turn 3, it gets worse.
Uh-oh. Ugh. So he was already out of rhythm, and he's been turned around by Ryan Healy down at turn 3. So that drops Kobe Williams out of what would have been effectively a top 4 position after the pit stop. So that's not good whatsoever for Kobe Williams.
Healy's just redressed up position too, so good sportsmanship there. I mean, look at the pace that Harlow's got there, and then it just disappears. He's lifting off the throttle, and he's saving fuel. He's backing out of it massively.
All part
So
of
he
his
doesn't want to
strategy.
get to the lead.
Oh, is he though? Up the inside at turn 1. He's not backing out of it there. Lane change, and the Altus Esports Audi goes back to the front. That was a late move. Does Job Stewart fight back? He comes ranging up on the outside into turn 3, but Harlow will have the preferred inside line.
It felt like that move could have been so much easier and completed before the braking zone with the run he had, but either way, he goes for it, he gets it done cleanly, and he puts himself back into the lead of the race. Bad news for him, Stewart has not let him get away at all, and he's tucked right up behind that Audi at the moment. There, he's got a 5-second gap back to Thornhill and Pruden. Thornhill's now found his way up into third place ahead of Pruden.
The cars that took fresher tyres are definitely lapping more quickly than those who didn't. James Foster 1 minute 45.9 last time around compared to a 46.8 for Suzlin Harlow and a 47.0 for Job Stewart. So the tyre degradation here at the Daytona circuit, because of those long banked corners around the speedway section, it will definitely be higher tyre deg than what we've had in some of the last couple of tracks that we've been to, like Le Mans, for example. So there will be a gain to be made from new tyres, but I'm not sure if changing tyres at the first pit stop is necessarily the correct move, or if you'd actually be better off changing tyres at your second stop, as we've got yet another incident for Kobe Williams.
Kobe, settle it down. I think now he's getting a bit flustered. He's got the tyres overheated, and it's forcing more and more errors. He needs to just take stock and take a step back and regather his composure. Now, what's the delta for taking tyres? How many seconds does it roughly add to your pit stop time, Lockie?
20 to 25.
I mean, it's a lot of time, isn't it?
Mm.
Are you able to get that back? And is it worth it? That's what you've got to consider as you're driving around the racetrack at 250 kilometers an hour. Are the gains going to outweigh the short-term loss?
I reckon that...
If I'm him, I'm not taking tyres on this stop. He's in such a good spot right now. I wouldn't give up this track position.
But if he didn't take tyres at the earlier stop, which he didn't because it was very early in the race, I think at this particular track, trying to do the whole race on the one set of tyres, it might just be asking a bit too much of them. So I reckon that you do have to do at least one tyre change in this race.
Safety car's being called. Field's going to bunch up. We're forming... You got to be kidding me. Remember how you said at the start of the race they love to throw these cautions in an awkward time? We're forming in hope fuel based off our numbers. Remember, so it's actually a virtual safety car, this one. So what this is going to do, we're not going to stack them up behind an actual safety car. We're going to stack them up behind the race leader, is my interpretation of this. So I imagine once Harley gets to the line, he'll slow it down and everyone will condense behind him.
It's a different way of doing things because in previous rounds we've had the networkcafe.com.au safety car that has actually come out onto the track and bunched the field up. So, for whatever reason, they've decided to do things a bit differently today.
Well,
so it's a virtual networkcafe.com.au safety car.
It is. Harlow was just continuing to get on with it there. He's finally decided to lift off of the exit of 3, and this will allow everyone up to his back bumper now. Pit entry is closed, so no one is able to come in straight away. By the time we go back racing, you should be able to make it on fuel. Wonder if anyone's going to dive to the lane on this.
Well, this is where it gets interesting, Ryan, because if you pit at the end of this lap, you're going to be more than 50 minutes away from the finish. But if you pit on the next lap, you are going to be within 50 minutes of the finish. So,
the max number I was getting 52 minutes. 52 minutes, the exact number I was given.
Yeah, I reckon you stop. I reckon you can probably save enough fuel between now and the end of the race that you can make it home, I reckon. It's going to be tight, but it's not impossible. We're only talking a couple of minutes here.
Oh, we'll get our answer in a moment, won't we? Such a slow pace, is it? They're doing 100 kilometers an hour, so they're cruising at highway speed, but after going through here at, 250, 280 Ks, it's slow crawl for these guys now. Zach Nicolo not able to ease off. He's got to gas it up and catch back up to the rear end of the tail of the snake that's forming.
Now, the thing here for Kane Thornhill is if he does choose to stop now, that will be a longer stop for him because he won't have as much fuel in the tank at the moment, so he'll need to put more in to return it to full. So even though he's sitting in third position at the moment, because he is going to have a longer stationary time to refuel the car, that will drop him down the order a bit.
Hadn't thought of that, and he might be disappointed by the safety car as a result of that, because it means he's going to lose more position.
Correct. For his strategy to work, it would have been better off the race running green until everybody had done their pit stops.
What's going on there?
With Doles and Ellery? I have no idea. Here we go. In comes the entire field. It is absolute peak hour traffic down there in pit lane at the moment. So there is one car that stayed out, but I think that was the car that was a lap down. everybody else has come on in. So
What
now we
this
get
does, it neutralises the entire previous 40 minutes of racing and turns this into a 50-minute sprint.
very quick stop. So Jordan Pruden, no tyres for him, obviously. He's come straight back out of the pits after only being stationary for 6.5 seconds. So splash and dash for Jordan Pruden in the McLaren, and he's the first car to rejoin the racetrack out of pit lane. Jackson Suzlin-Harlow tyres for the Olsen Esports Audi, and he's back on his way. That was a slow stop for JSH, and that's going to leave him buried in the field. There's a lot of cars that didn't take tyres.
Yeah. Obviously, Harlow has, so he's dropped down. But impressed and questioning Pruden's pit stop. He was 4th before that safety car came out. Now scored in 3rd behind the 2 guys that stayed out, Dunphy and Yeaman. So, I mean, I don't know. Does he have enough fuel in the car? Surely not.
So Dunphy, Yeaman, also Robert Prisdale and Berry Clinton, they get to stop for their second stop. Jet Johnson already made 2 pit stops, but he won't have the fuel on board to get to the end. So Job Stewart will be the next car behind Jordan Pruden that should be right to get to the end based on fuel range. Ian McMahon has moved up quite significantly in that pit stop cycle, but interesting that the likes of Job Stewart and Andre Heimgartner and Jordan Pruden, for that matter, are all going to try and do this entire race on the one set of tyres. So we've basically got 3 different strategies that are playing out here, Ryan. We've got the drivers that are trying to do the race on one set of tyres. We've got the drivers who stops for tyres at their first pit stop, and we've got the drivers who have put fresh tyres on at their second pit stop.
Check out how far down the order Harlow is now. Got a lot of work to do.
Yeah, 19th position, and like I said, there's been races in this series where Jackson Suzlin-Harlow's had the pace advantage over everybody else, but with the way that the pit stops and the strategy has played out, he's ended up in a situation where he's been buried in the field, and when he's been back there more often than not, he's then been the victim of incidents in the cut and thrust of the mid-pack. So if JSH wants to win this race tonight, he's going to have to be not just fast enough to work his way back up to the front of the field, but he's also going to need to make sure that he doesn't get involved in any of the problems and the dramas that have ruled him out of contention in previous rounds.
Normally at this point we'd see the one to go signal given out. Maybe Dunphy can just stick a 1 out the hand of his... Stick a 1 out the side of his car on his hand. So there's 1 lap to go here.
A couple of other cars that have just come into the pits as well. Berry Clinton and Robert Crisdale coming in this time around, so they drop down the order as a result of taking their stops. So Dunphy and Yeaman, the 2 cars at the head of the queue, yet to stop for a second pit stop. Jordan Pruden is 3rd, having a very quick pit stop. Jet Johnson in 4th. Has already done 2 pit stops, but still needs to make another one. Job Stewart 5th, right to the end. Ian McMahon 6th, right to the end. Andre Heimgartner 7th, right to the end. Jeff Connell, Ryan Healy and Jack Boyd rounding out the top 10. All those cars right to go to the end of the race. Interesting to see as well that Berry Clinton and Robert Crisdale, so they've just come in and they've taken their pit stops. Where they've come back out, though, has been in positions 13 and 14. So even despite the fact that they stayed out for an extra lap with the field bunched up behind the safety car, they still didn't fall all the way to the back of the queue. They've slotted in the mid-pack. Yeah, very interesting, because normally what happens in that situation is if you delay your stop by a lap, the entire train will go past while you're sitting in pit lane, but on this occasion it hasn't happened that way. This is the danger time, Ryan. Whenever you get this situation with a variation in strategies and the field bunched up behind the safety car, and you've got different cars and drivers with different abilities all mixed up, and typically it is a recipe for there to be a bit of action. So it'll be a bit of a nervous time, this restart phase of the race, particularly for the championship contenders like Job Stewart, although at least he is relatively towards the front of the field, scored inside the top 5 at the moment. But for someone like Jackson Suzlin-Harlow, who's been so fast tonight, the way that he negotiates his way through the next 2 or 3 laps is going to be absolutely critical in determining if he's going to be a contender for victory.
This is going to be a wild restart. Old versus new tyres. There's some fast guys buried down the order. This should provide us with a fantastic 45-minute sprint to the end.
So, do we get a restart this time around? Can everybody make it home on fuel? We think they probably can. Except for maybe Jordan Pruden. But even he, I'm sure with his experience in these cars that he wouldn't have got his sums wrong, surely. We get back underway. Green flag flies. 3/4 of an hour remaining in round number 5 of the Speed Cafe GT3 Eseries. Jordan Pruden moves it to the inside. Job Stewart takes the high line on Jet Johnson and moves straight up into position number 4 at turn 1. And is already challenging down the inside of Pruden, who in turn is looking to the inside of Daniel Yeaman. Jet Johnson fights back on the inside of Job Stewart, and it's Stewart who has to go almost cross-country to make sure that he doesn't lose that position.
Job was not going to get caught out on that restart. It darted straight to the top of the racetrack to get around Johnson, who's now losing out another.
So there's cars here that are out of sequence in terms of strategy, but are still fighting with the race leaders, including Daniel Yeaman, who tucks in behind Jordan Pruden. Matt Dunphy leads the race under green conditions. Remember, Dunphy and Yeaman will still have to stop again. So Jordan Pruden, the highest placed car that can make it to the end. Oh, and contact back in the pack, and that involves Andre Heimgartner. Goodness gracious me, we're going to have mass carnage here. A few cars have done a really good job of dodging that incident, but massive damage to Andre Heimgartner, who was one of our leading contenders, but he is on his roof and out of contention in this one.
Wow, massive shunt there. So there's Heimgartner on the outside, gets hip checked up the racetrack. He comes back down and just hooks the right rear. They made contact, around they go. A couple cars left with nowhere to go on that one.
Wow, there were multiple cars that are involved in that incident. Ryan Healy was involved in it. Bradley Carr was another driver who was involved in that collision. Oh, Jet Johnson off the road as well. Remember, he was running in the top 5, but goes skating off the racetrack at the bus stop and drops a bunch of spots. Jordan Pruden through to the lead, so Jordan Pruden's overtaken Matt Dunphy.
And Stewart has 2 now, up into second.
So Dunphy and Yeaman continuing their fight. Ian McMahon, the next one, just ahead of Jeff Connell. Now, Jeff Connell has got fresher tyres than a lot of the cars ahead of him on the racetrack, because Jeff Connell took a fresh set of tyres at his first pit stop. So Jeff Connell, in terms of tyres, might actually be in a pretty decent position here, but at the moment he is struggling for a bit of track position. And Jackson Suzlin-Harlow, who dodged all of that carnage that we saw involving Heimgartner and co, has moved back up inside the top 10. Kane Thornhill was one of the other drivers very unfortunately involved in that incident too, Ryan. The incident that also claims the cars of Andre Heimgartner, Ryan Healy and Bradley Carr.
Harlow is finding a lot of spots very quickly, and he's just gone around the outside of Chris Dale. They made contact. Chris Dale spins it off the exit of the bus stop, and that's a shame for him. Just a case of two cars vying for the same piece of real estate on the entry to the corner. He's going to rejoin at the back of a massive train of cars headed up by Beric Linton, who's got John Martin all over him. Here's a quick replay.
Oh, Robert Crisdale, I think, would have been a bit better off just to breathe out of the throttle there, because Jackson Suzel and Harlow clearly had the overlap, although I'll tell you what, the second part of the bus stop, Jackson Suzel and Harlow only just made it through that corner, and I think he had to take a fair bit of the grass as well. Look at the congestion a bit further back in the pack. Emerson Harvey and the recovering John Martin, who was in the fence on lap 1, has somehow got himself back up into 13th position. Just goes to show what safety cars can do in terms of allowing drivers to get back in the game, and we've got a car stopped on the left-hand side of the road there at turn number 3 as well.
Rain Campbell touring the grass just up the road. I think that's probably related. I reckon Emerson Harvey picked up 4 spots between the start-finish line on the exit of turn 1 too, by the way. He was incredibly quick through there.
Sam Batty off the road, and the car that had stopped there was Ryan Healy as well. There is Ryan Healy just grinding to a halt. Oh, and look at this. There's an approaching big pack of cars, and Rain Campbell, who was already out high and wide, having to take evasive action and go right off the racetrack to avoid it, as we see the other car going spinning there in the background as well.
Some of those guys were frighteningly unsighted there. Stewart's right up behind Pruden now, challenging for the race lead. Needs to get this done as soon as he can before those faster guys get to him. Remember, Stewart's on tyres that are going to last him the whole race. He can't work them too hard, because when we get to the very end, that's when he's going to really feel the effect and the difference between his tyres and the guys on the fresh ones behind. Guys like Connell and Harlow, notably. So down into turn 1, does Pruden defend? He doesn't. Opens it up, and Stewart says, "Thank you very much, I'll take that." Late on the brakes, up the inside. Back to the lead of the race comes Job Stewart.
Daniel Yeaman sitting in 3rd position, but out of sequence in terms of pit stops. Then it's Ian McMahon. Then it's Jeff Connell, who has fresher tyres, like I said, than the cars in front of him. Back to Jack Boyd, Matt Dunphy. Matt Dunphy, another driver who's out of sequence and still has to make another pit stop. James Foster in 8th position. And Jackson Suzel and Harlow make that now in 8th position, because Suzel and Harlow has got ahead of James Foster. And critically, Jackson Suzel and Harlow was the fastest driver on the racetrack last time around. More dramas for Brad Clegg. He's been in the thick of the action today with a couple of incidents at turn 1. Looks like he's going to have another one here. Again, on that outside line, not a lot of grip out there. And that's what causes him to lose the back end of the BMW and go rotating it backwards.
So Harlow now into 8th. He's 6 odd seconds behind Stewart. The lap times he's doing, though, are quicker than him. At least last lap it was. Remember, he's trying to navigate traffic. Stewart's now got clean air too. Look at the wall of cars at Harley's. Oh, contact off the exit of the bus stop. Around goes Yeaman, middle of the racetrack, facing backwards. And someone else, it was Ian McMahon, grabbed the fence, trying to avoid him.
Well, that's good for Jeff Connell, because Jeff Connell has basically picked up those 2 positions without having to do anything. And he was actually struggling a bit, Jeff Connell, to make up spots. And Daniel Yeaman now finds himself in a very awkward position, having to do a 3-point turn, and that's going to blow his strategy. He really needed to be running at the same pace as the leaders there to minimise the number of positions that he was going to lose when he came in for his final pit stop. And Ian McMahon, who's sustained damage, is back in for a 3rd pit stop as well to get that repaired. So here's how it happened. And Ian McMahon was a long way back, because Daniel Yeaman was in the tow of Jordan Pruden. So I'm interested to see what's happened here on the exit of the bus stop, and to see if Daniel Yeaman has maybe made a mistake that Ian McMahon's been an innocent victim in. Let's have a look. So, firing it through the bus stop chicane. Yeah, Daniel Yeaman's gone. The second part of the bus stop. So what's happened to Ian McMahon then?
As he tried to avoid him, he went up the track and hit the fence on the right-hand side.
That'll do it. So seriously unlucky for Ian McMahon and seriously lucky for Jeff Connell, who was able to avoid both of those cars. And Jackson Suzlin-Harlow now up into position 5. And once again, he was considerably quicker. By considerably, I mean almost a second than our race leader, Job Stewart. So Jackson Suzlin-Harlow then, Ryan, based on the pace that he's got at the moment and the tyre condition that he's got, even though he's back in 5th position at the moment, there's still 36 minutes remaining. Strategically, I'd say that he's in the box seat to win this race. Big call, I know, but it is looking pretty good based on the numbers.
Yeah, he's flying out there. 45.863 last lap. Stewart a 46.5, and he's battling with Pruden as well. In fact, Pruden actually had his nose ahead at the line last time by, so these two in a very tight battle, holding each other up as well, I dare say.
Jack Boyd did a 45.8, and so did James Foster. So Suzlin-Harlow's fast, but there's other cars around him that have got similarly good terms of speed at the moment.
Now, Pruden, he had a remarkably short stop, didn't he? So what do we think he's got in terms of fuel?
Just enough to get to the end, I reckon.
Because he came from a long way back to jump them all.
Yeah,
certainly not look like he's saving fuel, but must have just nailed that pit stop.
He's sticking with Job Stewart at the moment. So like I said, Boyd and Foster both setting similar sorts of lap times to Jackson Suzlin-Harlow at the moment, so they're not out of the game yet either. And then all 3 of those cars are catching up to the leaders. We've only got 4.9 seconds separating the top 6 cars in the motor race. It's shaping out up to an absolute flat-out sprint to the line between all of these cars and drivers. And like I said before, the thing about James Foster's car was that it seemed to get faster and faster as the fuel burned down, and as it got towards the end of the stint. So James Foster is a bit of a dark horse, I reckon. He let Suzlin-Harlow go. He's having to follow the Audi at the moment. But I wouldn't be surprised once we get into the final 15 or 20 minute sprint to the line if we start to see a bit more attacking driving from James Foster in the Ferrari. Here's our 2 race leaders. So since Job Stewart got past Jordan Pruden, he's not been able to pull away from that McLaren. Only 0.3 of a second separating our 2 race leaders. Here's Kobe Williams ahead of John Martin, who's battling it out with Reece Cohen. And Paul Auditore, who had a very long pit stop earlier on and is fighting to try and work his way back into the top 10 and at least keep himself in contention for the championship. But I'll tell you what, if Job Stewart wins tonight's race, he extends his lead again, he is going to be in a very, very comfortable position heading to Mount Panorama in a fortnight.
Yeah, he certainly is. 220 points on offer, you said earlier. And he'll be looking at a margin up and over 150 if things finish the way they are at the moment. But 33 minutes is a long way, especially around the Daytona International Speedway, the road course, the famous road course, made famous by the Rolex 24 Hours of Daytona. It precedes the beginning of each motorsport calendar year for the majority of motorsport fans and drivers and teams alike. Always good to bring GT cars to this track. Pruden at the front had a huge moment coming out of the bus stop. And that's dropped him all the way off the back of Stewart. And now, Jeff Connell to his outside.
Yeah, so a lot of time lost there for Jordan Pruden. But the outside, maybe not the place that you want to be. As we've seen, there's not a lot of grip out there heading into turn number 1. What Connell's trying to do is carry the momentum and let that extra speed take him all the way round. But I don't think he's quite got enough extra pace, and he decides to tuck in behind. And Jack Boyd is lurking there as well. He's made up significant time on these 2 cars, and there are Jackson Suzlin-Harlow and James Foster. Connell to the inside, a late move at turn 3. late lunge down the inside. Jordan Prudence saw him coming at the last minute and just opened the steering up enough to make sure there wasn't contact. Pruden has managed to hold on to that position, but he's under serious pressure now from both Jeff Connell and Jack Boyd. And while these are slowing each other down, these three cars, it's allowing both Suzel and Harlow and Foster to come in, and Job Stewart now has a 2.1 second lead in this motor race. He's been able to skip clear of the freight train of cars that are battling it out for second position.
Harlow's pace is becoming less and less remarkable at the moment as this run continues. I think where we're going to see the fresh tyres show their biggest benefit, though, is at the end of the run. Because as you know, with the tyre wear, they can often plateau just a bit in terms of drop-off, but then once you reach a certain point, they reach a cliff, so to speak, and they really start to drop time quickly. As we get towards the end of this race, huge chance of guys like Stewart reaching that cliff and dropping off while Harlow continues to charge with the fresher rubber.
Yeah, but if Harlow wants to take advantage of that fresh rubber, he does need some track position as well. He needs to get ahead of these cars. And again, that comes back to the point I made before about the fact that Audi goes better in clean air and in cool track temperatures. Jack Boyd looking very racy on the back of Jeff Connell at the moment. Connell late under brakes into turn number 1. Jordan Pruden having to cover his line. We saw how aggressive Jeff Connell was under brakes setting up to turn 3 on the previous lap. Again, looks to the inside. Again, but Pruden gone. Can you believe it? Jordan Pruden looping the car all on his own from second position. He was under pressure from the cars behind and he's made a mistake all on his own, and unfortunately Kobe Williams, who has been a bit of a punching bag in this race today, cops a tag from John Martin, which sends him spinning off the racetrack. Up at turn number 3, and quite frankly, I don't think that John Martin was far enough down the inside. Good awareness and good evasive action from Reece Cohen and Paul Auditore just behind to avoid that incident.
So now that Jeff Connell's in second, and he's got clean air, I wonder if he can close in on Job Stewart at all. There's 2.8 seconds back at the moment, then Jack Boyd, then Harlow, then Foster in 5th, who's doing a remarkable job of hanging with these guys and going with them. So as this run continues, can that Ferrari prop up towards the battle for the lead?
Suzel and Harlow down the inside of Jack Boyd, and he got a really, really good run through the bus stop. And James Foster tries to follow him through at turn 1, and does so as well. Nice opportunistic move from the Ferrari driver, and it's Jack Boyd who gets shuffled back a couple of positions. Matt Dunphy now finally pits after a 21 lap stint, so he'll drop out of the lead pack as a result of that. Stewart, Connell, Suzel and Harlow, Foster, Boyd. That's your top 5 at the moment. 3.9 seconds separating the top 5 cars in the motor race. Jordan Pruden back to 6th position after that self-inflicted spin at turn number 3. And Tyler Collins having an excursion a bit further down the order.
Let's look a little bit further down the order. What battles are there at the moment? Pretty close one in terms of the gap. For 11th place, Robert Crudesdale on the back of Eddie Beswick. And poor old Kobe Williams back there as well, after the copious amount of issues he's had so far in this race. John Martin, who we saw on the podium at Nordschleife, he's back in 15th place at the moment, struggling for outright pace after his performance there.
Robert Crudesdale up in 12th position at the moment, just behind Eddie Beswick. I'm a bit sorry for Kobe Williams, but he's still got time to work his way back up into the top 10. Kobe Williams, the driver who currently sits in 10th position, even despite the fact that he's had a drive-through penalty. Ben Holiday, youngest driver in the field at just 12 years old. And we've had a change in second position, Ryan. It's just flashed up on timing. Jackson Suzlin-Harlow has moved ahead of Jeff Connell. So Jackson Suzlin-Harlow can now go BMW hunting. And he's made the move on Jeff Connell down the inside into turn 1.
What do you take if you're going BMW hunting? What do you bring with you? You go hunting, you get a bow and arrow. What do you take to hunt a BMW?
A set of fresh tyres.
And an Audi.
Yep. A set of fresh tyres, an Audi, and a Jackson Suzlin-Harlow. So, Jeff Connell has lost second position. He's now going to come under attack from James Foster, who would dearly love to get a podium finish. And based on the pace that he's got, certainly capable of it tonight, James Foster. What does Jackson Suzlin-Harlow have in reserve for Job Stewart, though? He's done a sensational job. We were talking before about how the pit strategy for Suzlin-Harlow and taking on that set of tyres left him buried in the pack. Speaking of packs, this pack that we're watching now, this is all for position. Position 16 back. Just shows you how ferocious the competition is in the mid-pack of this series, but everyone from Ben Darley down. You've got Jake Bonham in there, Peter Dunham, Ray Oliver, Derek Linton, Zach Nickel, Brady Carr, Jack Cafode, Jason Mikowski. It's a pack of 10 cars that are only separated by 4 seconds.
And someone has to go straight at the bus stop. That was Derek Linton, unfortunately. Update to Emerson Harvey's been given a drive-through penalty for passing before the control line on the restart, so he'll be gutted by that. That'll drop him a long way down the order. Andre Heimgartner was also given a penalty, but unfortunately he's already retired from the race.
Yeah, it's not good news for Emerson Harvey, who's currently in 7th position, so he'll drop out of the top 10 by serving that drive-through penalty.
Bonham just got by Dahlia, round the outside into turn number 1. Dunham runs wide, and Oliver gets by him.
That time's the last time through. Job Stewart of 46.2, Jackson Suzlin-Harlow of 46.1. 2 seconds the margin first to second, so Stewart has responded, but the fastest driver on the racetrack last time through was James Foster in 4th position, who continues to do a good job in that Ferrari, but needs to find a way past Jeff Connell if he wants to get onto the podium. Watching from Osborne with Zach Nickel, who's part of that big battle group that we were talking about before, down in 20th position at the moment, just behind Oliver and Dunham, who are side by side on the run into turn 6. Down the inside, Pete Dunham in the Mercedes goes through, makes the move through on Ray Oliver. That's for 18th position.
Nichols gained 50. Nichols gained 20 spots, not 50, so far in this race, which is pretty impressive. He'll be happy with how this one's gone so far. Looking to pick up a couple more before this one comes to an end.
Kobe Williams moving up ahead of Ben Holiday there, up to 11th position for Kobe Williams. He's doing a pretty good job at this stage of fighting back from adversity, as Emerson Harvey pits to serve the drive-through penalty, and Jackson Suzlin-Harlow lights up the timing screen with a 1 minute 46.3 and takes 4/10 of a second out of our race leader Job Stewart. The margin down to just 2 seconds. The thing here about this pit lane though, Ryan, is that a drive-through penalty doesn't probably cost you as much time than it does at some other circuits. It's actually quite a short pit lane transit time of only about 17 seconds.
Yeah, because you come in at incredibly high speed from top end, slam on the brakes, you're immediately into the lane. When you exit, you're shortcutting the first corner.
That's true. So
back out the racing line.
Drive-through here at Daytona is certainly nowhere near as costly as what it is at Spa, for example, where it's a 60-second transit time, pit entry to pit exit.
The thing with the pace from our second place man, he's dragging everyone with him. Connell and Foster and Boyd all putting down 46.3s at last lap as well. So poor old Stewart is going to have an absolutely mammoth task if they get to him, because he's going to have 4 cars quicker than him trying to get by.
Shaping up for a grandstand finish, isn't it, Ryan? Heading into the last quarter of an hour of the race, we're potentially going to have a 5-car freight train of GT cars all battling it out for the win, which is just how we like it in any sort of endurance racing. Foster looking to the outside of Connell. Oh, not a lot of grip out there, and almost contact between the 2 cars. Looking to try and do the over and under there was James Foster. Getting the sense that he's a bit impatient, and I think that's because he knows that he's got the speed to win this race. If he can get ahead of Jeff Connell and Jackson Suzlin Harlow, that Ferrari has got the speed to challenge for victory here tonight.
This is really shaping up well to be a fantastic finish to the penultimate round of the SpeedCafe.com GT3 Eseries. Thanks to Kincrome, who's our title sponsor. Those 4 cars all in the camera shot together, and there's 7 cars all in one camera shot.
This freight train of cars has had danger written all over it for quite some time. And Ray Oliver, who we saw getting overtaken by Peter Dunham a couple of laps ago, just running out of road and out-braking himself at turn 3. Dalton Ellery, who was in the fence on lap 1.
Oh, yeah, no.
Oh.
It's into the Armco and around for Ray Oliver. Now, I didn't quite catch that, but I'm assuming there was contact there for him to end up.
Something's happened to Jackson Suzlin Harlow. Our second place driver has fallen back to 6th position. Just while we've been watching these incidents in the mid-pack, there's been an incident involving Jackson Suzlin Harlow. So we'll take a look at that in a couple of seconds' time. So this is another look at the incident with Ray Oliver. And here we go. So Jackson Suzlin Harlow's had a spin at the bus stop. He was just ahead of Jeff Connell. James Foster's cleaned him up. So James Foster, we said that the Ferrari driver was getting a bit impatient, being stuck behind those cars. He's gone for a slingshot double manoeuvre heading into the bus stop chicane. He's not been able to get the car stopped. He has sideswiped the Altus Esports Audi. Oh, that move was never on down there, and unfortunately, I think that race control may not look too favourably upon that one.
No. He'll be taking a tour down the pit lane, dropping 17 seconds down the order. So Jeff Connell in second. What that's done is it's opened up the gap for Stewart now, and Connell is 3.6 seconds back. And I don't think he's got the pace to catch him all by himself. Foster's going to be taken out of the equation, and I think Jack Boyd's in the same boat as Connell, so this has really opened it up for Job Stewart now. Harlow back here, 15 seconds off, so he's out of the equation. And this might put one hand on the trophy for Stewart, touchwood, if he keeps the car there.
Jackson Suzlin Harlow will be decidedly unimpressed with that, because that incident has, you would have to say, cost him any chance whatsoever of challenging victory. The other question was that there was fairly hefty contact between both of those cars, so there's a possibility that might have done a bit of damage to Jackson Suzlin Harlow's Audi as well. Be interesting to see what the lap times are like, but they dropped, like you say, a good 14 or 15 seconds as a result of that incident.
Harvey's had an issue at the bus stop, and he's had an issue with another car. That's Eddie Bestwick. Remember, Harvey had already served the drive-through. That's why he's back there. And our motor simulation replay is going to tell us why he and Bestwick were slow. Bestwick was really forcing the issue down there. Actually hip-checked Harvey, then he spun, rejoins, but around they both go in unison. And Kobe Williams splits the gap. Second car in line, wasn't quite as lucky.
What a dodge from Kobe Williams. 1 minute, he had his path blocked completely by 2 race cars. Here's how it looks from on board. Oh, can I go left? Can I go right? Oh, we actually glanced the back of one of those cars as he went through, so he didn't completely emerge unscathed.
As well got a piece of it. That was the second car through that we saw definitely hit him. So that,
Now, In answer to your question about Jackson Suzlin Harlow, or it was actually the question that I asked about does he have damage, well, the car seems to be going okay at the moment because JSH has just punched out a lap time faster than the 5 cars ahead of him on the racetrack. Now, we saw it at the Nürburgring that there were 2 safety cars. What would happen, Ryan, if we had one more safety car just to bunch the field up again? Just as a hypothetical question.
Hypothetically, I'd make the bold call that your top 3 drivers would not win the race. Because I think the number 50-year-old would have a bit between the teeth and he'd charge through and, do what he does best. I think Boyd and Pruden would be in a good spot to pick up the pieces there. I think James Foster will probably have retribution coming his way as well. But with the lack of a physical safety car today, I don't think we can actually entertain that theory, unfortunately, because it forced a virtual safety car, which I don't think they want to throw again. So for Stewart, all it is now is a case of just keeping the eyes forward, navigating the traffic cleanly, and not making a mistake for 15 more minutes at the end of 90 minutes of racing.
He needs to take some advice from the Groundhog Day movie. Don't drive angry.
That made it.
Our producers just said that Ryan would be too young to understand that movie reference from Groundhog Day. That's all right. I've given you the education on the vocabulary, Ryan. I'm more than happy to give you an education on movie quotes as well.
I'm not taking an education on anything to do with movies from a man that says Days of Thunder is a bad movie. So...
Oh, you went there.
Oh, he went there,
squeeze
dude.
up the inside. Speaking of going there,
yeah.
Brad Klink trying to make a 3-wide overtaking manoeuvre into turn 5, deciding, thankfully, to get out of that one and shuffling back in behind Brady Carr and tying with Collins.
There's always something that happens on the track to stop us from descending into a spiral of downward banter.
So, Job Stewart just managing the gap. James Foster now in the pits as well. And I dare say that will be for the drive-through penalty that we suggested was coming his way. And indeed, that has now been confirmed. So, that will drop James Foster back to 6th position, that tour of pit lane. What a shame, because...
it has to be a redress, because he's behind Harlow.
Correct. So... won't be much consolation for Jackson Suzlin and Harlow, though, because they would be ruining a potential race win that got away, as will James Foster, because I think that James Foster had the pace to really challenge at the front tonight, as we see Brady Carr being challenged by Brad Klink on the outside. Brady Carr, as mentioned, showing off the Bostik Alternative Freight Services livery as used by Tony Bates in the Bathurst 12-hour and the Australian GT Championship.
We never really got a chance to see how that contact unfolded. All we know is it was a bit messy. It looked like a case of, I think it was Clank, the car that triggered it all, but I won't definitively say that for sure. Trying to force it up the inside. This could be a replay of it. Here we go. So here's Clank at the back of it. They're side by side in front of him. Carr leaves the door slightly ajar, and yeah, Clank just trying to force the gap. It wasn't there. And I think the 6th seed actually ran wide of his own accord.
Ayrton Senna once said that if you don't go for a gap that exists, or if you no longer go for a gap that exists, you are no longer a racing car driver.
What happens if you go for a gap that doesn't exist?
I think the extension of that saying is if you go for half a gap, then it's not always possible to make that into a full-sized gap.
Yeah, something along those lines. Good battle for P10. Robert Crisdale, John Martin, they're wheel-to-wheel, door-to-door. Across the start-finish stripe they'll go. And it'll be Martin at the line. 12 minutes to go on this one, and around the outside on the brakes, he picks up the spot.
Yeah, this has been another driver who's staged a pretty strong recovery. Remember, John Martin was turning hard left into the Armco on the exit of turn 1 on lap 1, so he's done very well to fight back into the top 10 since then.
Wait a minute. So, you know how we both sort of assumed Stewart had this one in the bag and the gap probably wouldn't come down? It's come down by a second. It's actually just opened up by a couple of tenths because Stewart just got the benefit of a toe through the oval section, and you'll get one again here. So it's going to open up a little bit here. But once he gets by and back in the clean air with no help on these straights, or turns, if you want to call them, Connell is actually shutting the gap down. Last time, he was 4 tenths quicker.
And he does have fresher tyres at his disposal, Jeff Connell. So, yeah,
that really helps Stewart out.
Yeah, well, the thing here is that Jeff Connell will be hoping that that laps car helps him out as well once he gets up to it.
Well, it's Emerson Harvey, so it's a pretty fast laps car.
Margin just over 3 seconds at this stage. Job Stewart was able to stretch the margin out a little bit last time through as a result of getting that toe from Emerson Harvey. But you're right, not done yet, and there could be a final sting in the tail for this race.
I don't know what it is, but every race I've had the pleasure of commentating lately on some Speed TV always seems to finish in incredibly close style, no matter how the previous however many minutes of racing have panned out. I think it's a good testament to how close and competitive sim racing is.
So a reminder for those of you tuning in on speedcafe.com, next week we have a week off with this series, and that's of course because the Supercars Championship resumes at Sydney Motorsport Park. But the series will conclude the following weekend, so just over a fortnight from now, with the 2-hour race at Mount Panorama Bathurst.
Can't wait to plop myself down in front of the TV, switch it on, and actually see some good old racing back on live TV here in Australia on a real racetrack. I should note, we've had sim racing on Fox Sports, haven't we? Which has been good. So Emerson Harvey, well, I mentioned he's not a slow laps guy, he's a fast one. And well, the downside to that for Connell, because the upside was he's going to get a toe from him. The downside is it's taking a while to get there.
Job Stewart, I think, has sensed that Jeff Connell was maybe starting to punch out some fast times, and he has responded. And both of our leaders did pretty much the same lap times last time through, 1 minute 46.0. They are pulling away from Jack Boyd in 3rd position at this point, so Job Stewart just asserting his authority on this race. One of his championship rivals, though, well, 2nd place in the championship, Paul Auditore, currently 7th. Jackson Suzlin Harlow, 3rd in the championship in 5th position in this race. Kane Thornhill, who came into this round in 4th place in the championship, all the way down in 30th position, so not a great night for him. Jack Boyd, 5th in the championship, currently 3rd in this race. So Job Stewart in a very good position to extend his championship lead, and he is going to be heading to Mount Panorama in a very comfortable position, provided nothing goes wrong in the final 8 minutes.
You always want to head to Panorama in a comfortable spot, because you know when you exit Panorama, it's going to be a lot less comfortable. It's going to be a hard rider on there for 90 minutes. You see so much chaos when the GT cars come racing there for the Bathurst 12-hour in February each year. And the reason for that being, it's one of the trickiest racetracks in the world. Rated by some as our version of the Nordschleife, just, you know, a good 20k shorter, but it's a concrete canyon with a lot of twists and turns up across the top. High speed as well. And a lot of elevation change.
Paul Auditore as well, full credit to him, because once again tonight, while he hasn't necessarily had the pace to fight it out right at the front, he's been very, very consistent and looking good to maintain his perfect record of top 10 finishes within the series.
Shouldn't have said that, Lockie. Have you learned nothing of the commentator's curse? It is even more effective in sim racing than real world.
If something goes wrong for Paul Auditore with less than 7 minutes to go, I will personally write him an apology after this race.
He's been consistent today. Started 9th, running as high as 7th. He's currently 7th. He's been in and around this spot all day long. So
actually, he set the fastest lap of the race as well, with 1 minute 44.9, but in the back end of this race, he hasn't quite had the speed to take it to the race leaders.
Emerson Harvey is the fastest car on the racetrack, so Jeff Connell is getting absolutely zero slipstream effect off him. He was 0.2 quicker than Stewart last time, but that's not enough with 6 minutes remaining.
So Emerson Harvey currently down in 29th position, and like you say, 1 minute 45.9, fastest car on the racetrack last lap around. So it'll be a frustration for Emerson Harvey that he's a lap down, because if he hadn't had some of the dramas earlier in the race, based on the pace that he's showing at the moment, he's got the speed to be able to fight for a podium.
This lap, Stewart equalises, or rather Connell drops a couple tenths. Stewart's time remains the same, so evens out. It must be like a carrot dangling in front of him, Emerson Harvey at the moment. He just can't quite get there and get that beautiful toe. I mean, he could get him up towards, half a second to second if he gets it right.
Sometimes as a racing driver, that's the psychological boost that you can need as well. If you've got a faster car in front that you can either try and chase down or at least work to keep up with, that can often help you to punch out some really, really fast lap times. Good battle a bit further back here. Oh no, Tyler Collins having to dodge a car that was spinning in front. That was Pete Dunham, who rotated at turn 1. Tyler Collins up behind Jason Mikovsky. And it was Pete Dunham who got into that outside zone at turn number 1 that we've described as an area where you don't really want to venture into because of the deteriorating level of grip if you find yourself out there.
Just lost the rear. No stability.
Oh,
It was collected by someone. It was a bright blue car with black stripe. It was Eddie Bestwick. So, unfortunately for him, that's going to put him in a position where he's got a lot of front right damage. Look at that. Wheel, steering arm broken. Not broken.
so do you yeah, so the question is, you've got 3.5 minutes left. Do you try and persevere and get it home like that, or do you come into the pits for some repairs?
I'd try and limp it home, unless he's been given a mechanical black flag. In that case, you've got 3 laps to serve it. If there's less than 3 laps to go, you can still come home without pitting. So it depends how many laps we've got left.
So I feel a fair bit of traffic here for our race leaders to negotiate on their way home. Job Stewart's just caught up to quite a big group of cars that are all having their own battles for position. Again, this is a bit of a nervous moment. You want to make sure those lapped cars have seen you.
Yeah, just got by Jake Johnson. Jake Bottom stays up high and lets him go. Daniel Yeaman just off in front of him as well. He's got the benefit of the toe off all of these guys. Jeff Connell's got the benefit of the toe in a moment.
It's always a bit of an anxious time if you are rounding up lapped traffic, because apart from the fact that they could hold you up, there's always the possibility that one of them could make a mistake and actually crash into you.
I don't know what happened to Harvey as well. He's disappeared, which means Connell's definitely not getting his slipstream assistance.
He gets some slipstream assistance from Jet Johnson instead. Not sure that it's going to be enough to allow him to make up that much time on Job Stewart, though, we are on the second last lap of the race with just over 2 minutes remaining.
A tenth quicker last time by for Connell.
It's not enough. There's 2.6 seconds separating first and second as Jeff Connell now has to fight his way past some of those back markers.
His hope is that Daniel Yeaman's fast in this midfield section and he catches him or enters NASCAR 1 and 2, the perfect region behind, where he can gain the maximum amount possible. And looking at Yeaman's pace, he's stayed glued to the back of Stewart. Which means, again, Connell might miss out on getting us a good tow. He's been a bit unfortunate in his pursuit of this race win, hasn't he?
He has, but at the same time, he probably hasn't quite had that little bit of extra pace that he's needed to seriously challenge Job Stewart, but nevertheless, second place for Jeff Connell, providing you can bring it home from here. That will be the best result that he's had in the Speed Cafe GT3 Eseries so far.
The bus stop is so nerve-wracking as a leading car, especially in the final couple of laps. The final lap especially, you know, it's the final braking zone. You've got to nail it. You've got to nail the exit, because you know if you don't and you've got a car behind you, you've just thrown away the race win completely because of how long the gap is until the start-finish line. Luckily for Stewart, he should be safe, but the buffer he's got, a massive margin for him now. Final
2.7 seconds, yep. So it's a comfortable margin. And Job Stewart, he's just been so impressive. I mean, that little accident at the Nürburgring aside, but right throughout this A-Series, Job Stewart, he's always been one of the fastest drivers in the field, but in terms of racecraft and strategy, he has been a cut above the rest as well. And tonight, big part of the reason that he's going to drive to victory lane is because he was able to get the life out of a single set of tyres that meant that he saved time and didn't lose track position taking on fresh tyres during the pit stop. And in the end, Jackson Suzlin-Harlow may have had the pace to catch him, we'll never know, but the fact that Job Stewart was able to be up the front of the pack out of trouble, whereas Jackson Suzlin-Harlow yet again found himself back in the danger zone, that is what's going to make all of the difference in the outcome of this race tonight. So, the bus stop through the final chicane for one last time, and the Pursuit Sim Racing is the car that they've all been pursuing once again tonight in the speedcafe.com GT3 A-Series. There will still be the one round to go at Bathurst in a fortnight, but with this victory, his third of the series, Job Stewart is going to put one hand on the speedcafe.com GT3 A-Series trophy. It is a brilliantly executed victory in round number 5 of the Speed Cafe GT3 A-Series at Daytona International Raceway. It's Job Stewart who is your race winner.
There's a close battle for P5 as well. Jordan Pruden's thrown it off the racetrack somewhere around there, dropped from 4th to 6th. Now on the toe, he's going to get 5th place back as James Foster can do nothing to defend it. Jordan Pruden will claim 5th place. And that elevated Hull up to 4th with that mistake that Pruden made.
Oh, and this is close as well. Paul Auditore and Reece Cohen side by side across the finish line. Auditore just by a couple of tenths of a second manages to hold on to 7th position ahead of Cohen. A couple of cars spinning out across the finish line. Ben Holiday and Richard Skender, they're going to battle right to the flag as well, almost bumping each other on the run up to the finish line, and Skender on the outside with the momentum is going to take that position. So a few of these battles.
And Collins behind them. Here they come to the line. Collins to the outside of the slingshot maneuver, runs them tight, and Tyler Collins will take that one to claim P13. Markowski losing out.
How good are some of those battles in the run to the finish? A couple of positions they're not decided until we get to the checkered flag. Fantastic stuff in the closing stages of this race. Series, your race winner, Job Stewart. He will extend the championship lead once again and head to Mount Panorama in a very, very solid position in terms of the points standings. He's on his way to victory lane at Daytona tonight. All of the spectators on the Ferris wheel getting a great view of the action from Daytona tonight. And here are your race results provisionally. Job Stewart, your winner, ahead of Jeff Connell and Jack Boyd. So once again, 3 different manufacturers occupying the top 3 positions. Jackson, Suzel and Harlow, case of what might have been for him tonight, and he finishes up in 4th spot. And then it's Jordan Pruden in 5th, James Foster 6th, Paul Auditore continuing his perfect run of top 10 results in 7th position, Reece Cohen in 8th, John Martin recovering from a first lap crash to finish in 9th position, and Kobe Williams, an eventful race for him tonight, but still manages to finish inside the top 10.
He did a good job to finish there with all the drama he had in the middle of that race. Richard Skender coming home in 11th ahead of Ben Holiday by a 10th of a second. Tyler Collins and Markowski, their close battle resulted in them 13th and 14th. Cam McDougall and Brady Carr, Zach Nickel, Pete Dunham, Barrick Linton and Matt Dunphy making up your top 20 at the end of the evening.
Back to David Hueso in 21st, Sam Batty in 22nd, Ray Oliver, Brad Clink and Jack Cathode, and Robert Chrisdale in 26th. Then we had some of the cars that were lapped out, and they would play a bit of a factor in the late stages of the race. Daniel Yeaman, Jake Bonham, Emerson Harvey, who we saw running with our race leader, and then Kane Thornhill in 30th position, who got tangled up with Andre Heimgartner earlier in the race.
Your last few guys, see Dahlia there, Jet Johnson, Beswick, Ellery, and then the rest of the field all retiring, unfortunately, for various issues. Another fantastic race, for sure. Another great addition to the series. We'll take a fortnight off, but at least it'll be filled in by supercars, but it will be a shame not to call this series next week. But I believe you've got some drivers standing by for some interviews here, Lockie.
Indeed we do. It's now time for the podium presentation for round number 5 of the speedcafe.com GT3 Eseries in 3rd place tonight. Congratulations to Jack Boyd. Jack, congratulations, mate. An eventful race, particularly there at the end, but you managed to bring it home on the podium. Talk us through your night.
Yeah, thanks, mate. That was an awesome race. Unfortunately, didn't really quali that well. I think I was in 10th, and then just found a rhythm for the first stint, and then unfortunately I spun at turn 1. I think I got back to 15th, but I didn't take tyres the whole race, and I managed to work my way back up.
Towards the end of the race there, we saw that you were embroiled in a pretty ferocious battle with Jackson Suzel, Harlow, James Foster and Jeff Connell. Were you starting to struggle with the tyres in that closing stint?
Yeah, for sure. That battle was very intense. The tyres were, definitely on our last legs, especially through the chicane. Got a bit hairy there many times.
Talk us through the late incident that we saw with James Foster and Jackson Suzel and Harlow, because you would have had a bird's eye view of that one from your perspective.
Yeah, that unfolded right in front of me. I was just kind of sitting back, waiting for hit the brakes pretty early for the chicane, and then I think James might have missed his brakes or something, because I went in very hot, and I think he collected Harlow and maybe Jeff as well. But just drove through and made sure I didn't hit anyone.
We've seen that you've been one of the consistent performers of the Speed Cafe GT3 series. You're firmly entrenched in the top 5 in the series standings. What have you most been enjoying about competing in this series?
Had a few good rounds. Most enjoyable part is definitely that most people give really good racing room, and the hour and a half, 2-hour races are definitely a really good race with some really good guys.
Good stuff, Jack. Before we let you go, I'm sure there are some people in the background that you would like to thank tonight.
For sure. I'd like to thank all the guys at GRM Gone Rogue Motorsports, and also Bimstruck Drafting Services for coming on board. Cheers, guys.
Awesome stuff. There he is, Jack Boyd, 3rd place tonight. In 2nd place tonight, our runner-up making it onto the podium for Mercedes, Jeff Connell. And Jeff is standing by for a chat with Ryan Jones.
Jeff, congratulations. P2 today, which is a fantastic result after a very tough race.
Yeah, thanks a lot. It's always good fun racing at Daytona with the drafting. and yeah, it was good fun.
So how did the strategy play out for you? We pretty confident you took tyres on the first pit stop of the evening. Obviously, you had some pace late on over Stewart, who didn't take tyres at all. Do you think the right call was to take tyres, and obviously the time that cost you at the time?
I think so, because obviously knowing there was going to be a safety car after that, it sort of drags you back up to everyone.
Yeah.
But who knows in the end? Could have even taken tyres on the next pit stop, but I didn't. So who knows? Maybe that was a better strategy, but I suppose we'll never know.
Yeah, well, in hindsight, it's 2020, isn't it? But still, P2, pretty good result. It worked out well for you. Now, there was an incident, quite a notable incident, with James Foster and Harlow. You were pretty much in it at the time. What was your take on that?
Yeah, got the heart rate up, but no, I was just I was trying to push Jackson along and use him to catch Job, and yeah, just at the last second, I saw Foster pull out down the inside, so I sort of dodged it and got out of his way, and then just stayed on the brake and held my breath that I didn't get ran into after.
Very lucky man there, I'd say. Now, when you were behind, it looked for a moment like you guys might start to reel in Job Stewart, and you were definitely for a time. Then, obviously, he fell away as a result of that contact, and you sort of couldn't continue that progress. There were a couple laps where you caught him. It was just a case of consistency wasn't there, or just outright pace was just slightly lacking to find that last couple of seconds.
Yeah, it was a pity in a way that Jackson got taken out because he was definitely towing me up to Job. Jackson was quicker through the infield, and then obviously he'd tow me back up to him again on the oval. And then after that, it seemed like I was just very similar speed to Job. Definitely didn't have enough advantage to reel that gap in.
Well, thank you for having a chat to us, and congratulations again on coming home P2 tonight. Before we let you go, who are the people that got it done for you? Any sponsors you need to give a shout out to?
No sponsors. I just got into iRacing a couple of months ago.
Oh wow!
Bought some Logitech gear, and I started about a week or two before this series. So
that's
yeah,
a worrying thought. You're very fast.
Yeah, thanks. It's been good fun. I've sort of surprised myself.
Well, thank you again for having a chat, and we'll be keeping a very close eye on you as we move forward in the future.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Congratulations to Jeff Connell, and I'll tell you what, for somebody who only got into iRacing very recently and is running as a privateer, he is someone who is going to be catching the attention from a lot of race teams up and down pit lane, that is for sure. But we move on to our round winner tonight. It's his third round win of the Speed Cafe GT3 Eseries. Congratulations to Job Stewart from Pursuit Sim Racing. And Job, we're making a bit of a habit of these post-race interviews. Talk us through your night.
Oh yeah, it was a great night, great win. It was pretty hairy at the start there for the first few laps, but after that just settled into a pretty good rhythm and went on to win the race, which was pretty good.
We saw that in the first pit stop you were able to jump ahead of Jackson, Suzel and Harlow, and then in the second pit stop you chose not to take tyres where quite a few of your key rivals, including Jackson, Suzel and Harlow, did take tyres. Ultimately, Jackson got caught up in an incident which meant that we didn't really get to see if he could catch you at the end. But when Jackson was up to second and starting to catch you, do you think that you would have had enough in reserve to have been able to hold him out?
Yeah, I think he may have caught me just at the end, but the tyres are really good for the first maybe 5 or 6 laps, and then they drop off a fair bit. So he caught me a fair bit for those early stages, then the gap sort of stayed the same for a few laps, and unfortunately he got turned or whatever. So, but yeah, I think he would have caught me, and I think I may have been able to hold on. But yeah, it would have been a pretty good battle if he did catch me.
We saw that for most of the race, except for possibly the first stint when you were behind Jackson, you were out in the lead and had a fair bit of fresh air. But were there any particularly fun battles that you can remember from tonight?
Yeah, there was a few fun battles on the first lap with the front guys. That was pretty fun when Jackson got a bit of a gap out the front. But apart from that, it was a pretty quiet race for me.
So obviously you've now banked your third race win, 4 podium finishes from 5 rounds. You're in a very comfortable position in the championship heading to Bathurst. I mean, what's your mindset now heading to the final round at Mount Panorama in a couple of weeks?
Just to try and take it easy and finish as high up as I can, because it's great to have the upper foot going into the final round. And yeah, just hoping not to crash, hoping at least finish in the top 10 to just secure the championship.
You've driven exceptionally well throughout the season. There's no doubt about that. And just finally, as always, people who you would like to thank.
Yeah, just thanks to Wayne Mackey from Erebus and all the guys at Erebus for all their help. Thanks to Pursuit Sim Racing, my sim team, and thanks to United Speed Shop and Kincrome and Speed Cafe. Kincrome and Speed Cafe for all the good hard work.
Good stuff. There we go. Job Stewart, our round winner tonight for the penultimate round of the speedcafe.com GT3 Eseries. And that concludes all of the action from the series tonight. As mentioned, it concludes in a couple of weeks' time with a 2-hour race at Mount Panorama Bathurst. Very much looking forward to that one. Hope you've enjoyed watching all of the action here on speedcafe.com. On behalf of my co-commentator, Ryan Jones, and the team at SimSpeed Television for producing the broadcast, I'm Lockie Mansell. See you next time. Bye for now.
Speedcafe.com, your number one source for all the latest motorsport news and features. Breaking news, live event updates, unprecedented global motorsport coverage, performance motoring news and reviews. All in the palm of your hand, anywhere, anytime. Speedcafe.com, first, fast and free.
Fantastic. This is GT Racing right now.
He's got traction. He got rid of the outside of both of them. Maloney.
Oh, he's taken Anderson. Anderson's up top.
Oh my God. Oh, big crash. Oh my goodness. Half the field's going to get rolled.
Section's very close. These guys I want to make their way through the field very quickly.
Oh, there we go. Oh, no. That's massive. This is it. This is over. I can't believe this. Oh, my God.
God, what?